So many of you on the channel in the comment section have brought this up over the last several months. And in the few group chats that I'm in as well, the topic always tends to go towards where does AT&T fit in all of this? And a lot of you have said that in the comment section. I've been asked this in several emails. And then, like I said, I also get asked this the topic always gravitates in the group chats towards where does AT&T fit in all of this? So the article that I have pulled up, which I will leave in the description down below, the main point is from an earnings perspective, and this shouldn't just be from an earnings perspective. This is probably from an overall standpoint. Return on invested capital, and this will also go for Verizon too, because they spent a ton of money acquiring the assets that they got. But in terms of AT&T as well, right? It's the return on invested capital. They went big on C-band, not as big as Verizon, but they went big. And then when they were tapped out and felt like they didn't want to get into an even bigger bidding war with Verizon, they turned around and spent a good amount on DoD spectrum. That's how they offset not getting a bigger amount at the C-band auction, right? Verizon completely outbid them. Verizon spent like 50 plus billion, and now they're continuing to spend more to gain more early clearance. And that's when AT&T backed off and said, okay, I'll invest more in that DoD auction. You can have however much C-band you want. I'm not going to invest and get into an even bigger bidding war, right? Could that have potentially been different if AT&T didn't invest and went big on media? Potentially. They would have had more money, and they could have potentially outbid Verizon if they didn't go into the big purchases in DirecTV and Warner Media. But now that's over and done with, right? The media's history, they sold it. They got what they got for it. Now they got the spectrum on their hands, and a ton of capital was invested, and now everybody's worried and asking what's the return on the invested capital. And that invested capital is continuing, right? The capex pressure or intensity on the capex is quite high, right? They're doing 24 billion this year and 23 next year, and then it kind of levels off, and they drop it by 10 or 20%, but the intensity is still high. So now the two main businesses that AT&T is investing in, and they made this very, very clear at the analyst day, the conferences, it's wireless and fiber. Those are the two main parts of the business now that they're investing in very heavily. And that favors the two businesses because now they no longer have to spend that 5 to 6 billion that they were investing on media. Now they can split that up between fiber and wireless. And yes, for those of you who didn't know, out of the capex in the previous years when they had media, they had to invest 5 to 6 billion into creating new content or original content. That now they no longer have to do. That money now goes either into wireless, fiber, or they split it, however they want to do it. So what does that mean for you, the consumer? It should mean an all-out acceleration in everything, right? More homes served with fiber, and then more of this DoD C-band spectrum going on the cell sites. That's what it should ultimately result in. And yet people are still questioning where does AT&T fit in all of this? And I think everyone has the right to ask that question because they aren't the leader in anything, right? They're not leading in any of the mid-band deployments. They're starting from a point of being behind. Although they're accelerating quite quickly, they are still behind at scale. Verizon has more scale on mid-band now. And of course, T-Mobile has a 2-year head start on that as well. And then the question is still, are we getting a densification project from AT&T, right? A lot of people still have questions about that, and they weren't very upfront. Even at the most recent analyst day, they didn't come out and say, okay, we're going to build 70, 80,000 C-RAN. They didn't say that, or we're going to do, this is our additional densification project over the next 3 years. They did not say anything of the sort at this analyst day. So again, right now, everything is speculative. Me and you me and you guys in the comment section, we can say, okay, they're going to densify over the next 3 years, but we don't know what the targets are. I'm seeing new sites go up for AT&T. I've seen it on Reddit. Some of you guys are posting it. I've seen it, but we don't know where that's going to go. Is that going to stop? Are they really going to densify down to, a mile to 2 mile site spacing? I don't know. That remains to be seen. Verizon back in 2014-15 made it very clear, and they gave us a densification project that over the next 3 years or so, they would densify to this level. And T-Mobile had to build their network on mid-band. They had no low band, so they had no choice but to densify. Like that, everything else on that front is out of question. T-Mobile had no choice but to densify, even in markets where it didn't even make financial sense because they had no market share back then. Remember, they were on the verge of going bankrupt. They still had to build density into the network to give the customer base some kind of coverage indoors, right? Because they had no low band. Again, I posted a chart of that like years ago. They had 0.1% low band. They had low band in like one county. And that was it before they acquired the A block from Verizon on band 12. They had absolutely no low band. None going into LTE. So again, that remains to be seen from AT&T, the densification. Are we getting it? Is that happening? Or are they just going to, add that progress as they go along? That still, it all remains to be seen. We don't know. But where does AT&T fit into all of this? I think right now it's very apparent that the promotional pressure is helping them. The promos on the phones, it's really making people gravitate towards them. It's not a leading network product because they're still building that out. And it's not really leading with the fiber product because they're still bringing more fiber to the home. Eventually, they'll get to 25 million households covered and more, right? But for now, they are still investing and building up towards that. So for the moment, I think they kind of feel like they have to invest back into the acquisition cost to get these people on board. And for what it's worth, I mean, it is working, but they are shedding out a ton of money for this. We're talking billions of dollars that are being spent on getting these people onto the network. So then again, the question becomes, going back to the article, the return on the invested capital. You could make the argument that they are also spending heavy capital on these promotional offerings. And they're not holding back. And you guys will see more of this come September 7th. They're not holding back. I mean, any condition is really expensive, and that's going to translate, and you guys will see that in September. That's expensive, and they're not going to the Galaxy like currently for the Samsungs. They're not doing just the S5 or the S6. No, they're going all the way back to the Galaxy S3 in any condition, and they're giving you $1,000 towards the Fold or the Z Flip. So that's costing them a ton of money, and analysts and investors are going to continue to keep asking that question: is it sustainable, and when does it stop? They're going to ask that because that's very expensive. Hans Vestberg said at the second quarter earnings call, he says it is not sustainable and we will not be further pursuing it. That's why AT&T is not expecting a competitive response from Verizon. And they're continuing to pressure Verizon. And Verizon is getting it from both sides because T-Mobile's coming in too. T-Mobile's not letting up. People say Verizon has the motherload of customers. Well, they're exposing that because they're trying to get those people. And of course, the cable companies are trying to as well with the lower price point. So that's why I think AT&T fits in. I think they're going to remain competitive with the promotional offerings, but I still think that they could be considered the sleeping giant because they have a nice spectrum portfolio, not only in the C-band and the DoD, but you also have to look at their sub 2 gigahertz holdings as well. And they have a band a bit above that. They got the band 30, which is like, I think 2.1. So you got to look at their overall holdings, right? They got money. That's not a problem. They got that. So they're going to deploy, right? They're still getting reimbursements from the government for the first net expansion. So that's still happening. So there's motivation there, right? They got to hit a certain target, they get reimbursed. I think the amount that they're getting reimbursed, of course, is a lot less than it was at the beginning. I think now they're doing like between 800 million to a billion. I think that's the reimbursement. And then eventually that will phase out. That will become, there will be a point where they no longer get that reimbursement once they meet that certain target. And then it would be up to them to invest to further expand beyond that. But again, that expansion is ongoing every day from what I'm being told. So eventually there may be a point, because you got to take into consideration as well, AT&T is not loading up their core, their main network core, with fixed wireless access. Whether that be, network slicing coming into play, whatever, the main urban and somewhat of the suburban core would not be loaded with fixed wireless access customers. So you can make the argument that AT&T at some point may be the fastest wireless network in the country. It could happen because they don't have to take on that massive usage. Will they dibble and dabble into fixed wireless access? Eventually, I think they will. Across their DSL footprint, they're going to move that base to fixed wireless. And I think there's going to be some rural parts where they're going to get into that competition too, but it's not going to be the main selling product. That will remain fiber. And I think I'm starting to agree, and I'm starting to see that vision. I'm not downplaying fixed wireless access. I think it's a great product. I think it will work for many, but I think there will be some churn with that. There's two sides to that story, right? T-Mobile has to publicly sell this product, so they're going to tell you what they're going to tell you publicly, but behind the scenes, I'm getting told some very different things. I'm being told it's very, very hard to manage this fixed wireless traffic, and I completely agree. I understand it because this usage is completely different than wireless, right? That's why they're actually allowing it, because they know wireless, the mobile usage is not ever going to fill up the amount of capacity that's on air. But then you're going to slap on home broadband usage, which is a whole nother animal, right? Before, we would get like add-ons and perks like unlimited hotspot, which that would help sell some of that capacity, or MVNOs, right? It would help sell some of that capacity, which wasn't as bad because MVNOs are still mobile users. You can monitor the usage, you can deprioritize, etc. But I'm telling you guys right now, in all honesty, and I track this every single day, that fixed wireless access usage is a different monster. It's just something that you just, especially them, because they were never in the business, so it's not something they accounted for. They didn't account for the BitTorrents and the heavy usage. So the TOS still hasn't changed, and it's slamming the networks. It's taxing the hell out of those sectors. To put it bluntly. So yeah, I think the strategy on the fiber is I think it's the right product to put in the household, because over time there's going to be more stuff that the household will use that's going to use a Wi-Fi product, right? Smart fridge, smart pictures, and NFTs and all that other stuff, right? So that's going to be, I think, the final product that you're going to need if you have a bigger household. I think if you have a 2 to 3 room household, I don't think it's going to be as bad. I think fixed wireless access can ultimately handle it, but it's still going to be another animal to handle on the network managing side. So I think Stanky is onto something when he says, okay, 2025, the usage is going to explode 5 times. I mean, they did their homework. They did their research. So I'll definitely give them that. So like I said, I think eventually we could start making the argument that AT&T will be the sleeping giant. They're investing a ton of money, and they can dynamically allocate however much they want to, right? It's the end of the year, or we're heading towards the end of the year, and they could say, we're probably not going to get all these fiber ads done, so let's reallocate some of that back to wireless, and let's accelerate there. That's how flexible they are on spending and how much money they have available for use. So just keep all of that in mind as you look at AT&T, and we will see what what they look like at the third quarter earnings, which should be October, probably a day or before or after Verizon. Verizon does theirs October 21st. So we'll see what happens, and we'll see how their quarter turns out. I think it's going to be strong, just based on the promos. I mean, people are not gonna look away when there's money, free money to be made. So that's definitely something that people are going to be attracted to. So make sure you guys stay tuned to the channel for more. Like, share, subscribe, follow my social media outlets. This is Tyrone with Tech Life. I will see y'all in the next one. Peace.